Chisholm's wedding was really fun, aside Auntie Ngozi's busybody work that she was doing.
Blessing thought to herself as she looked through the pictures and videos she took that day while lying on her bed. She dialed Chisholm's number.
Hi, baby girl. How are you?
Sister Blessing, I'm fine. Good evening.
Evening, you just forgot about me, eh?
Sister Blessing, no. Why will I forget my only sister? I have just been busy lately.
Okay, I hear you. When are you guys coming back to Nigeria? Or you guys don't want to leave the moon?
Very soon, we still want to enjoy the honey a bit more.
Oh, wow. Okay, greet Kunle for me.
Your call card has been exhausted.
Nah. Was it not yesterday that I recharged? And now my card has finished. Chill.
She opened her mobile banking app in order to recharge, but was met with a shock.
As how now? What do you mean maintenance charges has been deducted 5,000 naira? How much is even inside the account? 150,000 naira. And I have to pay my light bill today. God. I promised to send Musa his 100,000 naira for my car repair today. Oh, what kind of issue is this?
She closed the app angrily as she stood up from her bed to go get snacks from her kitchen.
So I'm broke now and the month has not even ended.
Wow.
Where is all my money even going?
She asked without expecting an answer. June was when the money became undeniable. It was not that Blessing was poor. She earned a pretty decent salary, working as a marketing manager in a mid-sized consumer goods company on Victoria Island. 700,000 naira a month. That was no small money. But how was it that she was broke on the 15th of June? Interesting, right? She had for 3 years managed money the way she managed certain other discomforts. She preferred to treat the immediate symptoms than address the root cause. She has a habit called the retail therapy. She had never fully acknowledged it because it has always been small purchases like, wow, this tree is nice, let me just get it. It will complement that red Birkin bag I have. Or, this bag is cute, let me just. Or, the food looks good, let me just order it. It will help me distress. I work hard and it has been a very stressful week. I need to spoil myself. 2 nights later, she decided to do the math and call this thing by its name. If not, she'll be forced to go stay with her parents. She cannot continue to live like this. Feeding from hand to mouth. She sat down at her kitchen table and started arranging her receipts for the past 12 months. From the retail therapy purchases to her medical bills, from the fibroid diagnosis and treatments she's currently undergoing, to the loan she had taken for her car 2 years ago, which she was still paying, to the home expenditures, to the credit card she used for the things that should have come from her savings, but could not because the savings account had 43,000 naira in it, and had approximately that amount for the past year, to the BNPL, Buy Now, Pay Later platform she had downloaded 4 months ago and tried not to open. The contribution she had made towards Chisholm traditional items, not because she was required to, but because she had felt the pressure, she had felt the eyes, she had felt the implication that a firstborn daughter who contributed generously was a firstborn daughter who had it together. She looked at the numbers spread across her kitchen table, the printed receipts, the phone statement, the calculator still open on her screen, and she sat very still. She was 34 years old, and she had very little to show for it financially. Despite her earnings and how hard she works, she has spent years spending money the way women sometimes do when they are sad and have no better tools on how to address the cause of the sadness, but on comfort, on appearances, on the small daily reassurance of a new thing, a nice thing, a thing that said to the world, I am fine, I am together, look at how together I am. She put her head down on the table. She did not cry. She was past crying about this particular thing. She left the papers on the table and went to bed without eating. She lay in the dark for a long time, just looking at the ceiling, the way she looked at it on the first morning of the year. But this time, without the dream to grieve, without even the particular sadness of longing, just a flat, clear-eyed reckoning and realization that she had in some ways be performing a life. Although, genuinely, having a life and things she was grateful for, but she was still performing in the way of someone who has decided that the appearance of having it together is a reasonable substitute for actually having it together. Her flat was clean, her clothes were good, her salary was respectable, and underneath all of it, 43,000 naira in a savings account and a BNPL app she was afraid to open because of the interest that has been accumulating. She thought about the list she had kept for years, the husband list, the qualities, the prayers. She had been specific about him. She had been detailed, faithful, consistent. She had described a man of integrity, a man who was financially responsible, a man who was building something with intention. And then she asked herself quietly, in the dark,
Am I those things?
The question sat on her chest not as an accusation. She had had enough of those from the outside world, but as something simpler and more honest. A mirror held up not by an auntie at a wedding table, but by the part of herself that was tired of performing and ready, finally, to be real. She did not answer the question that night because she did not need to. The question itself was already doing something, shifting something. The way a key turning in a lock does not immediately open the door or does something to the mechanism that makes opening possible. She fell asleep around after midnight.
Hi, welcome to QuietBloom. My name is Success and I'm the face behind QuietBloom. Do well to enjoy our stories, like, share. If you have any observation, you can always drop it in the comment section.
While Blessing was still trying to figure out how to salvage her finances, she found something interesting. Or, let's say, something interesting found her. It was during one of the midweek Bible study that our church had launched, partly because the topic series was on identity, and she had felt vaguely that she needed to sit with that. The first meeting was on the first Wednesday of the month of July by 5 p.m. and she arrived late. She took a seat at the back row and was given a program by the woman next to her, who introduced herself without preamble.
Hi, my name is Obianuju Mba, but you can call me Uju. I've seen you a couple of times during Sunday services. Hi, I'm Blessing Umukoro. I have also seen you a couple of times during Sunday services. Nice to meet you.
Blessing had also seen Uju a couple of times during Sunday services, but they had never spoken. She knew a bit about her from little talk she had heard in church. Obianuju Umba, 31-year-old, a graphic designer with a small pedicure and manicure business by the side, deeply faithful and practical, judging from her service in church and the way she asked and answered questions during Sunday school, which had always made Blessing think, this is how faith is supposed to be. She wore a head wrap and had paint on her knuckles that she did not notice and didn't particularly care about when Blessing pointed it out.
You have paint on your knuckles. I came straight from a project. God doesn't care about paint, I think. Yeah, he doesn't.
They became friends with the speed that adult women rarely permit themselves, the speed of people who recognize each other without being able to explain exactly why. Within 2 sections, Uju had introduced her to Goodness, a 29-year-old nurse. And through Goodness, she reconnected with a girl she had lost touch with from secondary school, Tinuke, who was 32 years old, now a secondary school teacher with a passion for adolescent development that she talked about with the energy of someone who had found the thing they were made for. 4 women, all single, all faithful, all carrying the particular weight of that combination in a world that had endless opinions about what it meant and very little patience for how long it was taking, and crucially, honest about it, not performing a contentment they did not always feel, not reaching for Bible verses before they had finished listening, but actually present and actually honest. They began to meet outside the Bible study, Saturday mornings, rotating between flats, someone always bringing food. They called themselves nothing, no group name, no WhatsApp label, beyond their first name, but they were a fellowship in the truest sense. People holding each other up, calling each other higher, refusing to let each other settle or spiral. Goodness was the last to arrive at Uju's flat for the first Saturday morning, not because she was careless about time, but because she had stopped on the way to buy akara from the woman at the junction, whom she brought from every week without fail.
I cannot pass her without buying Ovo. She has been at that junction for 11 years. Rain, sun, no light. I think consistency like that deserves loyalty.
She explained, settling the paper bag on the table without apology. That was how Blessing came to understand one unique attribute of Goodness or Sai. She was a woman who noticed faithfulness in small things and responded to it with a quiet, practical devotion that had nothing to do with sentimentality and everything to do with a deep, considered sense of what a life well lived actually looked like. She was the one in any group who remembered what you said you were worried about 3 weeks ago and asked how it turned out. She was the one who, when she said she would pray for you, actually prayed, specifically, by name, with the particular detail you had shared, and told you afterwards that she had prayed, not as a performance, but as report. She was also, let's notice, the least likely of the 4 to speak first in any conversation, but when she did the room tends to go quiet. Blessing had told them during one of the subsequent Saturday meetings about the fibroid, about the money issue, about James, and about the others, about Auntie Ngozi at the wedding. She had told them about the fear that she was being left behind, and the deeper fear, the one she hardly ever said aloud, that she was not good enough for what she did ask God for. That somehow the 6 years of waiting were a verdict on her value rather than a process in her becoming. Goodness had said simply,
The waiting is not a sentence, Blessings. It is a classroom. But the curriculum is you, not him, you.
This made Blessing reflect back on her conversation with her Daisy following Chisom engagement. Oh, how she missed her. Her Daisy had relocated to Canada a few weeks before Chisom wedding. The room was quiet. Blessing looked at her.
How do you know that?
She asked, not rhetorically, genuinely. Goodness smiled briefly. The way people smiled at questions that reached farther back than the conversation.
Because I've been in the same classroom longer than you, not just about marriage, but in many other areas of my life. And I'm still in it, but I stopped treating it like a waiting room a long time ago, and that made all the difference.
Tinuke added,
And a classroom is not a punishment, it is a preparation. The question is what you do while you're in it.
Tinuke's voice brought her back to the room. Uju said nothing for a moment and then,
I think we should all make lists, not vision boards, proper lists. What we need to become, not just who we want to marry. What areas of our lives God is asking us to steward better. Let's be accountable to each other about the real things. Not just pray for husbands. Pray for the women we need to become.
They had all been quiet for a moment. Then Blessing nodded slowly.
Okay, I'll start. I think I will write 2. One for me and the other about my future partner.
She wrote the first list on a Saturday morning in August, sitting on her bedroom floor with her back against the bed and her journal across her knees, while the rain came down outside and the city had the rare quiet of a well-watered morning. The first list was the one she had been keeping in her head for years, the quality she wanted in a husband. She had written versions of it before, briefly, in old journals she did since filled and put away. But this time, she wrote it slowly, thoughtfully, with the Spirit of God she genuinely invited to guide her hand. She wrote,
A man who loves God not as a performance, but as a fact of his nature. The way he breathes, the way he wakes. A man of integrity, who is the same person whether or not he is being watched. A man with vision, not just ambition, but vision, purpose, direction. Emotionally intelligent and willing to be emotionally responsible. And a man who will choose to love me on the days when love is a verb and not a feeling. A man who has the humility to admit when he is wrong, and the strength to lead without dominating. A man who sees my mind as a gift, not a threat. Financially responsible and building something with intention. A man that's kind. A man who will be a father who stays.
She read it out loud again and again. She felt reading it that she was describing someone real, not a fantasy, not an impossible composite, but a real man who could exist. And she felt reading it that she had work to do. Because she knew this, to marry a man of integrity, she needed to be a woman of integrity. To welcome a man who was financially responsible, she needed to become financially responsible. To receive a man who was emotionally healthy, she needed to do the work of her own emotional health. If she wants to marry a kind man, she herself needs to be kind. You cannot ask God for something and be entirely unprepared to receive it. She turned to the next page and wrote the second list. Not who she wanted, but who she needed to become.
I need to become a good steward of money. Not rich, but responsible. Not miserly, but intentional. I need to take my health seriously. The fibroids, the weight, the things I have been eating and not eating, the ways I have been treating this body as though it is disposable. I need to build a clearer identity outside of what I am waiting for. I am not a woman waiting for a husband. I am blessing. I need to know what that means. I need to align my values and actually live by them, not just profess them. Where my behavior diverges from what I say I believe, I need to close that gap. I need to love people better, generously, without agenda, without the keeping of scores, and be kind. I need to find and live my purpose. What did God make me for beyond being a wife? What does He want to do through me now, while I am exactly who and where I am?
She read the list, prayed over it, and then she did something she had not done for the last 6 years, or had done only intermittently, half-heartedly, always in the shadow of the larger acts. She prayed specifically about who she was becoming, not about the husband, but about herself. She prayed,
Lord, make me into the woman who can receive what you have planned. Not just ready to be loved, but ready to be trusted with money, with health, with purpose, with the love of another human being. Shape me. I am not asking for shortcuts. I am asking to be genuinely transformed. Show me where to start.
She closed the journal. She made herself a proper breakfast. Egg, fruit, water. Not the tea and biscuits she usually grabbed on her way out, but because it was a Saturday and she was making choices, and the choice to feed herself well was the first small act of the new version. Few days after the list, she had written boldly on the small whiteboard hanging on the wall beside her study table, the journey of becoming. Step 1, financial discipline. I downloaded the budgeting app that Uju had recommended, S Special, one of the proper ones, not a pretty one, a functional one that tracked everything and told you without sentimentality exactly where your money was going. She deleted the BNPL app after paying up what she was owing plus the interest. She called the bank and arranged to consolidate her car debt into a structured repayment. She gave herself a grocery budget and spent an embarrassing long time in the supermarket doing the math before putting things into her basket. One evening, she sat with Goodness. Goodness, who had quietly and without fanfare been managing her nursing salary with a kind of discipline that had allowed her to save towards a land purchase, and asked her to explain how she did it, not theoretically, practically, what she wrote down, what she said no to, how she thought about money differently. Goodness said,
The first thing I did was stop spending to feel better. Whenever I wanted to buy something that wasn't on the plan, I would ask myself, am I hungry, tired, lonely, or sad? Because those are the 4 things I was mostly trying to fix with spending, and none of them are actually fixed by buying things.
Blessing laughed because it was both funny and devastatingly accurate.
All 4 of those are me, most of the time.
So you see why the spending never worked. Deal with the actual thing, then you won't need the purchase.
It was not a quick process. She would not pretend it was. There were weeks she slept, a dress she didn't need, a restaurant she could not afford, a cab she took because she was tired, and the bus felt like too much. But she confessed them to the group. She owned them. She adjusted, and slowly, month by month, her account balance began to grow in a way that felt different from how it has felt before. Not just accumulation, but evidence of a woman who was learning to trust herself.
Hi, welcome to QuietBloom. My name is Success, and I'm the face behind QuietBloom. Do well to enjoy our stories, like, share. If you have any observation, you can always drop it in the comment section.
The doctor had used the word management. The fibroid could be managed. The symptoms could be managed. The weight, which was contributing to the hormonal environment in which the fibroid thrived, could be managed. But management required intention, and Blessing had for years been in a complicated relationship with her body that was much more than the fibroids. She was by any clinical measure obese, a word she had always flinched from, partly because of its bluntness and partly because of the years of voice attached to it. Relative who had offered food and commented on how much she was eating, the boys in secondary school who had called her things she could still hear if she let herself, the way she had developed the armor of bright clothing and confident posture, and a personality so engaging that people would sometimes forget to look at the body, would engage with the mind and laugh, and the wit, and she would sometimes forget too, until she catched her reflection. She had tried before. The diet had worked for 2 weeks and then didn't. The gym membership she had paid for and used enthusiastically for a month before the enthusiasm became obligation, and the obligation became guilt, and the guilt became avoidance. The periods of careful eating undone by the period of not caring. This time was different, not because of discipline. She had tried discipline before, but because of motivation. The motivation was not a wedding, not a man, not a dress she wanted to fit in. The motivation was a conversation with Dr. Adeleke, in which the doctor had explained, patiently and precisely, that excess body fat drove estrogen production, and excess estrogen fed fibroid, and if she wanted to give herself the best possible chance for her health, for her fertility, for the life she wanted, she needed to care for her body as though it was something worth caring for. And something in Blessing had received that instruction differently than previous versions of the same information. because she had written the list, she had just prayed the prayer. She was in the middle of learning, slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, to steward what she had. And her body was something she had. It was not just a vehicle for a future man's admiration. It was not just a container for the children she hoped to have. It was hers, given to her by God, to be aired with the same intention she was not trying to bring to her money. She told Tinuke, who taught physical education alongside her literature classes, made a face. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Come, Saturday mornings I work. Come with me. We don't have to make it complicated. The first Saturday, she almost didn't go. She had set the alarm for 5:45 a.m. And when it went off, she lay still for a full 4 minutes, listening to the early sound of the neighborhood, the distant generator a roster somewhere that had apparently not received the memo about what constituted a reasonable hour. And she thought about how easy it would be to tell Tonike that she was not feeling well. It would even be partly true. Her lower abdomen was tender, the way it often was in the morning. The familiar low-growth press of the fibroid that she was still learning to live with rather than around. She got up anyway. She was trying to stop doing the things that were easy. Tinuke was already at the end of the street when Blessing arrived, stretching her calves against a fence post with the focused efficiency of someone who had been doing this long enough for it to be ordinary. She looked up.
You came. I almost didn't. I know, that's why I'm glad you did.
They walked. The route Tinuke had chosen ran along the quieter streets behind the market, wide enough for two people side by side. Early enough that the hawkers were only just beginning to set up, the day not yet fully awake. The hair had that particular Lagos quality of coolness that existed only in the hour before the heat remembered itself. For the first 20 minutes, they said very little. Blessing concentrated on breathing, on the movement of her legs, on the way the pavement felt under her feet, solid and real, a small repeated contrast between her body and the ground. She had not, she realized, paid this kind of attention to her own body in years. She had been so busy managing its pain, apologizing for its size, performing around its limitation, that she had forgotten it was also capable of simply moving through the world.
Can I tell you something? Always. I don't think I've ever exercised because I actually valued my body. I've exercised to punish it, to shrink it, to fix it so that it would be more acceptable. This feels different. I don't know why, maybe because the doctor told me the truth, and the truth was specific enough that I couldn't pretend anymore.
Tinuke was quiet for a moment, in the way she had of letting what you said fully land before she responded.
You know what I tell my girls? I tell them, your body is not a problem to be solved. It is a person to be known.
Blessing turned that sentence over slowly as they walked. A person to be known. She had spent so many years treating her body as evidence of discipline or its absence, evidence of desirability, evidence of something she owed the world a better version of. She had never thought of it as something to be known, the way you knew a person, with patience, with curiosity, with the willingness to listen to what it was telling you, instead of just telling it what to do.
I have a lot of catching up to do. We all do. That's why we walk.
They completed the route in 45 minutes. Blessing's knee ached slightly by the end, and she was breathing harder than she would have liked. But she was there. She had showed up, and standing at the corner where they split off towards their respective flats, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel. Not pride exactly, but something adjacent to it. The quiet satisfaction of a body that had been asked to do something, and had done it. She went home and made herself proper breakfast. November came with a different kind of its own trial. It was the wedding ceremony of her cousin, Adara, her father's brother's daughter. Adara was 26, who had been engaged for 14 months and was finally marrying in a large and elaborate ceremony in Port Harcourt. Blessing had thought she was ready. She had done the work of the previous months, the working, the budgeting, the Saturday mornings with the girls, the list she had written and prayed over and returned to. She was not the same woman who sat on her kitchen floor crying at the news of Chisholm's engagement. She knew this. She felt it in the steadiness of her hands as she packed her Shwebi clothes in her traveling bag. For the first time in years, she genuinely enjoyed the flight. Reading a novel, eating the biscuits without calculating them, watching the cloud below with something that felt close to lightness. But she had underestimated the table. The table at Adara's reception was its own territory. She had known this, had navigated versions of it for years, but there was something about the particular configuration of this table, the specific density of the aunties, with the specific look of women who had discussed her on their way to the venue, that reached past the months of becoming and found the older, more familiar wound. It began with the usual.
Blessing, you are looking well.
Thank you, Auntie.
You've lost a little weight. Good, good. A woman should keep herself. When is your own wedding now?
Adara.
Adara is 26. Your other sister just married. Even small Ogenekaro, your youngest brother, he has a serious girlfriend. Did you hear?
Ebenekaru, now 26 years old, had a girlfriend, and the table knew about it and was now using it as a data point in the ongoing assessment of Blessing's life.
I am trusting God, Auntie.
Same sentence, same tone, years of practice.
Trusting God is good, but are you trusting God and also going
Because
out?
leave her. She is concentrating on her career woman. But you know what they say? You know what? At a certain age,
The career cannot keep you warm.
And with that, the table tinted, and something in Blessing's chest tightened, not with the sharp pain it once would have, but with a dull, exhausted recognition. She was so tired, not of waiting. She had made a kind of peace with waiting. She was tired of being a subject, of being the unresolved storyline that other people felt entitled to comment on, to theorize about, to offer solution to, as though her singleness were a problem that existed primarily as an inconvenience to the people around her, rather than as a thing she was living with every single day, with as much grace and intention as she could manage. She said and forked and breathed. She looked at the women across from her, all of them meaning well. She told herself, all of them meaning well. She wanted to say,
do you know what it costs to sit at this table and smile? Do you know what it costs to be the firstborn in a family that asks me this question? They talk about you, always, at every gathering, as though it is a prayer they have been praying for me, not understanding that I have been praying it for myself daily for 6 years, and that the asking from outside does not help, it only adds weight to the thing I am already carrying.
but she couldn't find the words to articulate her thoughts.
God
Instead,
has
she
a
said,
plan for my life, Auntie. I am trusting him.
and then the quiet man at the end of the table, her father's brother, who had sat through the entire exchange without expression, looked up from his food. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a speech. He simply said, in the tone of a man who had observed something clearly and seen no reason not to say it,
Let her be. She is a good woman. The right man will be wise enough to know that.
and went back to his food. The table was quiet for a moment, in the specific way that tables go quiet when someone has said something true. Blessing looked at her uncle. He was not looking back at her. He had returned his attention to his plate, complete composure, as though what he had said required no follow-up, no acknowledgement, no performance of having said it. He had simply offered the truth as he saw it and considered the matter handled. She felt her eyes sting, but she did not cry.
Thank you, Uncle Chinedu.
He nodded and the conversation moved on. But she carried that sentence the whole way home. She was a good woman. The right man would be wise enough to know that. She wrote it in her journal that night as she prayed, Lord, send him to me while I'm still being made. Don't wait until I'm finished, because maybe I am never finished. Just meet me in the middle. December arrived quietly. Blessing had expected November to leave a longer shadow. The table, the aunties, the particular exhaustion of being discussed, but something about carrying Okushinedu's statements home with her had done something to the wound. Not healed it, but covered it with something solid enough to work on. She had written his words in her journal 3 times. Once the night she got back from the wedding, once on a Sunday morning when the loneliness had been particularly loud, once more just because she needed to see them again. She is a good woman. The right man would be wise enough to know that. She was choosing to believe it. December was also when Tinuke finally stopped asking and simply showed up at her door on the Saturday morning, the expression of someone who had run out of patience for indirect method.
You are coming with me today. No excuses. I have akara. You brought akara.
Goodness gave me the idea, Tinuke said. She had been asking Blessing to come for months. Always the same offer, always the same patient energy of someone who knows they are offering something good.
Are you coming or not?
Tinuke ran a volunteer membership program at a community center near her school, a Saturday gathering for teenage girls aged 30 to 17, girls from surrounding neighborhood, some from stable homes and some from very much less than stable homes. All of them at a particular age when the world begins to tell them what they are, and they are still deciding whether to believe it. Blessing said yes finally, more out of friendship than expectation. She was good at many things, but she had not thought of herself as particularly equipped for teenagers. She had a career in marketing, she understood data and campaigns and consumer behavior. What did she have to say to a 15-year-old? Well, it turned out to be everything. The first session, she sat at the back and watched Tinuke lead them, and she saw in the girls something she recognized, the trying on of identities, the comparison, the hunger for someone to look them in the eye and say, You are seen. You are specific. You are not interchangeable with the girl next to you. She watched one girl in particular, maybe 14, braids escaping her scrunchies. The way she laughed, open-mouthed and startled, as though she hadn't expected to laugh, as though laughter was something she was still getting used to allowing herself. After the session, Tunike introduced Blessing to the group as a guest.
She works in marketing at a big company in Lagos. She's going to talk to you about something important.
Blessing had not prepared the talk. She stood in front of 11 teenage girls and thought for a moment about what she knew, what she already knew, what she had earned the right to say. She said,
When I was your age, I spent a lot of time trying to be what other people needed me to be. And I was the responsible one, the firstborn, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who was always fine. And I got so good at performing fine that I lost track of who I actually was. I'm 34 now. I'm still figuring it out. But here's what I want you to know. The identity that someone else assigns you is not the only one available. You are allowed to choose. You are allowed to want things and build things and take up space and be complicated and be loud and be quiet and be wrong and grow and change. You are not finished. None of us are. That is not a problem. That is the gift.
The room was quiet. The girl with the braid was looking at her with an expression that Blessing recognized. The expression of someone hearing a thing they needed and did not know they needed. She went back the next Saturday and the one after. By February of the following year, she was co-facilitating the sections with Tunike, bringing her marketing skills to help the girls build simple, personal brand statements, workshopping with them on how to tell their own stories, giving them language for their own experiences. She stayed late to talk to the ones who lingered. She brought snacks because teenagers needed snacks. She learned their names and used them specifically because being known by name was something she had always needed and now understood as a need that could be met by intention. She told her girls on Saturday after the mentorship meeting with the teenagers.
I think I found it, the thing I'm for. I mean, not just the marketing job, the thing underneath it. I'm for telling people, of women, girls, that their story matters and they get to be in charge of it. Miss Blessing, I have been watching you talk about those girls for weeks. Every time you talk about them, your face lit up. Really? Yes, you look like yourself. Properly yourself. Not the marketing executive version. The you version.
That evening, she sat on her bedroom floor again, the same floor where she had written the list in August. Back against the bed, journal across her knees, but the weight of the room was different now. Not lighter exactly, more settled, with pretense at the door. She opened a new page and wrote the date, February 25th. Then she sat for a while without writing anything, just listening to the sounds of Lagos coming through the window, the generators, the distant music, the particular liveliness of a city that never fully went to sleep, and she thought about the year that had just passed. She had not yet received what she had asked for, but she had received something else. She was not the same woman who had woken up on the 1st of January of the previous year with a dream she could not finish and a journal verse she was trying to believe. That woman had been faithful and frightened and waiting for her life to begin. This woman, the one sitting on the floor in February with sore knees from walking and a savings account that was actually growing, and the face of a 14-year-old girl with braids in her memory. This woman understood something the January version had not. The life had already begun. It had been happening all along, in the waiting, in the reckoning, in the Saturday mornings, and the hard conversations, and the list written on the bedroom floor. God had not been withholding her life until the right man arrived. He had been building it and building her, and asking her in the kindest and most patient way to pay attention. She picked up her pen. She wrote,
Lord, I don't know what this year holds. I don't know when. I don't know how. But I know who you are, and I know that more than I did in January last year, who I am becoming. That is enough for tonight. Keep building. I'm not going anywhere.
She closed the journal. Outside, Lagos continued his unceasing, indifferent, beloved vigor. And Blessing Umukoro, now 35 years old, still waiting, still becoming more herself than she had ever been, smiled at nothing in particular, and meant it. What a year.
I look forward to reading your comments. And also thank you for watching. Until next time. Bye.